Hey, it's me, DB, and today I am bringing to you my Christmas book haul. I got a lot of books for Christmas, mostly because that's all I really asked for, because that's all I really want/need really. There are two books, I think, that are not going to be mentioned because they are for a reading vlog that is a secret as of right now. So those aren't going to be mentioned, but they're part of this haul. Basically, if you like this video, subscribe, like, share, all of that. These aren't going to be in any order really outside of these first three, because these are books I have already read but I wanted physical copies of. And these include The Yield by Tara June Winch, and this is following an Aboriginal woman as she's coming back to Australia after having been away for a long time because her grandfather has died, and she gets there and she finds out that her family's land is being taken away from them because a mining company has found I think copper behind their land, and so they have to leave the land, and she's basically trying to find a way to have her family keep their land. There are also two other POVs that kind of intertwine with the main narrative, and one of those is her grandfather who is writing a dictionary, and in that dictionary he tells you a word, he tells you what it means, and then he tells you how that connects to the overall narrative that he is telling you, if that makes sense. And the third perspective is through, I think, a missionary, talking about how he interacts with the population, and they kind of all give you an idea of this community and everything that led to the present day. I gave this 4 stars when I read it, but I think it was because it was an audiobook, and so I could not really absorb everything. So I think when I do go back and reread this, it'll be a 5 stars. Next is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. This won the Booker Prize, and I can say that it very much deserves that because I gave this 5 stars as an audiobook. So this book basically talks about the experiences of Black women in Britain that have dealt with the effects of colonialism. This does also talk about queer themes. It talks about pretty much a lot of aspects of the identities of Black women in the UK. This book talks about it in some way. There are immigrants too. It covers a lot of ground in this decently chunky book. Then I have Winter Counts by David Heska Wambi-Waden, and this is following Virgil Winterhorse, who is a local enforcer on his reservation, and basically he is there if someone does something bad and the police won't punish them, he'll go there and basically beat the fuck out of them. And he gets asked to see why there are drugs on the reservation, and in this investigation his nephew is kind of accused of being part of the drug operation, but Virgil knows that isn't true, and so he goes out to find who is behind all these drugs. This is a crime thriller thing, so if you are in the market for one of those, here you go. Then I have The Price of Salt by Patricia Highsmith, and this is basically a classic of sapphic fiction. Basically follows 2 women who come together, fall in love, and everything that happens to them afterwards. I'm pretty sure this has a sad ending because when it was written, for a long time, queer books didn't have happy endings. They usually ended very depressing. Realistically, could not have a happy ending back then because of society. So they tend to end on a very sad notes usually. Yeah, this was published in 1952, so I'm pretty sure it's going to end on a sad note. So great. Then I have The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. So basically, I know this from the musical, so I assume it's about this girl that is very good at singing, and there's a Phantom of the Opera, and shit goes down. That's all I really know from a musical, besides, I'm assuming he has some mysterious tunnel beneath the theater, and yeah. Then there's Botchan by Natsumi Soseki. This is a Japanese classic that was first published in 1906, and this is following a guy that is sent to teach in a traditional district, and he's basically challenged by this different perspective because he's from Tokyo, and stuff ensues. It isn't that long, so don't want to read too much into the synopsis. Basically, it's about that, On the topic of Japan, I have When the Emperor Was Divine by Julie Otsuka, and I'm pretty sure this is following a family's experiences in internment camp during World War II. Then there is Notes of a Crocodile, and this is a queer novel coming out of Taiwan. It was published, I think, in the mid till early 90s, and it takes place during the late 1890s in Taipei, and it is a coming-of-age story of queer misfits discovering love, friendship, and artistic affinity while hardly studying at Taiwan's most prestigious university. Then there is This Earth of Mankind by Pramoedia Ananta Tower. I probably mispronounced that, so my apologies to the author. Basically, this is part 1, I think, in a 4-book series, and basically this series kind of came into formation while the author was in prison, and he was telling stories to the other prisoners, and the author is from the island of Java and is following Mink, who is a young student, and he's also living on the island of Java, and he has to deal with the confines of being a colonized country. And then he falls in love with an Indo-European woman, and stuff ensues, I assume. I found out about the series through Reddit, I think, and I never read anything from the island of Java, so I kind of want to do that, just kind of read this and learn something, I guess. Then I have 2 books coming from Argentina, and that is Blow Up Stories by Julio Cortázar. This is pretty much a short story collection from the author, and yeah, no idea what it entails, of course, because it is a collection of short stories, but here we are. And then there is Tinder is the Flesh by Agustina Starica, and from what I remember of people telling me about this takes place in a world where people have to use humans for their meat, and our main character is a guy that is in charge of one of these meat processing plants, basically, and he starts to form an attachment to one of the I guess subjects, and then stuff ensues from there. I've heard this gets very gory and gross, and I'm pretty sure this is a horror novel, or is at least horror adjacent, so I guess know that going into it. Then there is Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. I've never read anything from this author. I know that this book was heavily talked about back when I first started watching BookTube back in 2016 or something, and it has been on my radar, but I just haven't gotten around to getting it, and now I have it. So here we are. And it's basically about either inspired by or directly about the author and her growing up in the 1960s and 1970s in the North and the South, because she was raised in South Carolina and also in Brooklyn, and she talks about how differently she was treated in both places and all that. So yeah, and this is told in I think free verse poetry, just poetry in general. So yeah, I haven't read anything in formed like this in a very long time. And I know that the author also has a very sizable backlist, so if I like this, there is plenty more to choose from. Then I got House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. This has been on my radar for a very long time because this is the first book of Sarah J. Maas that I was actually interested in, and now I have it. And since I've read ACOTAR, and now I'm halfway through the Throne of Glass series, I know I pretty much like her style, so hopefully I will like this too. I'm not going to say what it's about because, it's Sarah J. Maas, I don't really need to explain anything anymore. So yeah, there we are. Then I have Guns of the Dawn by Adrian Chavatsky. Basically, I know this is a fantasy with guns, so that sounds cool. So I'm here for that. So basically, in a country that has a lot of political turmoil because they have killed their king, and then they have clashed with their neighboring kingdom, and people keep dying in this war. So Emily Marshwick is conscripted to join the army, and she has to go there to fight on the front lines because they basically burn through a lot of their population. I'm pretty sure this is a standalone. Then there is Indigenous Literatures from Micronesia, and this is a collection of poetry, short stories, critical and creative essays, chants, and excerpts of plays by Indigenous Micronesian authors. And so basically, this has been on my radar since I first heard about it being released, I think back in 2018 or 2019. So now I have it. And I never read anything by an author from Micronesia, so now I can fix that. Then there is Alatsue by Darcy Little Badger, and all I know about this is that the main character can talk to ghosts and can maybe raise them. I'm not sure, but I know she can communicate with ghosts in some way, and that sounds pretty cool to me. And I like this cover, and I heard really good things about it from various people, so I got it, and here it is. I'm not gonna lie, I was basically gonna get it anyway just for the cover. So then there is They Call to Me Number 1 by Bev Sellers, and the author is basically going through 3 generation of women who attended one of the residential schools in the area, and she is talking about her own experiences as well as those of her mother and her grandmother. Then there is Growing Up Aboriginal in Australia. This is a collection of very many authors that are Aboriginal Australian, and they're basically talking about their experiences being Aboriginal in Australia, what it is like to grow up there, and how being Aboriginal has kind of shaped their childhood, I guess. This has also been on my radar for a while, but because it is I think the publisher is based in Australia, it can get pretty expensive because, you know, like Australian prices and there's like shipping and all that. So now I have it, and so problem solved. These next two I got off of recommendations from like other booktube friends. First is Jacoby by William Ritter. This is from Monica over at Mooney Reads. Basically like binge read the entire series in a few months. And this is basically following Abigail, who is hired by R.F. Jacoby, who is an investigator. And on her first day, you know, on the job, there is a serial killer on the loose, and basically Jacoby can like see like supernatural things, and so he thinks a supernatural creature is the one, you know, doing the murdery stuff, and so they have to go catch the murdery thing, I assume. But yeah, not gonna lie, I heard this is like 19th century, you know, historical with like fantasy elements, and I was sold. So then there is The Strings of Murder by Oscar de Muriel, and I'm pretty sure I heard of this from Connor over at Connor Stompanato. Basically, this is a mystery novel that focuses in on the death of a violinist. And then investigators Ian Frey and Detective McGray have to like work together to figure out who killed this violinist, because there was no way in or out of the locked music studio, and there are black magic symbols on the floor. The dead man's maid swears that there were 3 musicians playing before the murder, and the suspects all talk of a cursed violin once played by the devil himself. So sounds also kind of like supernatural mystery-esque, so I love that already. And those are all the books that I got for Christmas. I went through those very fast, but again, there's not much else to say because I haven't like read them yet. So yeah, and hopefully I will see you next week.